Earth doesn't feel like it's moving, but it is. Right now, the planet is spinning at over 1,000 miles per hour. And the only reason you don't notice is because everything moves together. So here's the question. What happens if that motion stops? Not slowly, not over hours. Instantly, the ground locks, but the atmosphere keeps its speed. The oceans keep their momentum, and every object on the surface tries to continue in a straight line. Within minutes, the planet is wrapped in supersonic wind. Oceans become moving walls, and the idea of day and night breaks completely. If Earth stopped spinning, the world wouldn't end, but it would never be the same planet again. The moment Earth stops spinning, the planet doesn't slow down, it locks. And that single detail changes everything, because you were already moving. Everyone was. At the equator, the ground was carrying you east at nearly 1,670 kilometers per hour. That's faster than a rifle bullet travels through air. So if the surface stops instantly, your body doesn't. For a fraction of a second, humanity becomes debris. Cars keep sliding. Trains tear off their tracks. Bridges twist like paper. Glass becomes a storm of blades. Anything not bolted down moves, and anything bolted down breaks. But the true catastrophe isn't the impact, it's what comes next. The atmosphere had been spinning too, and when the planet stops, the air keeps going. A planet-wide wind is born in seconds. Not a hurricane, not a tornado, a moving wall of air crossing continents, and it carries everything with it. Dust, sand, metal, fragments of cities. In the first minutes, the sky turns opaque. The sun disappears behind brown clouds, and the world becomes unrecognizable. If you're near the equator, you probably don't survive the first hour. But even far from it, there is no safe place outside, because once Earth stops spinning, the planet doesn't become still. It becomes violent, and the oceans haven't even arrived yet. After the first shock, Earth doesn't get quieter, it gets louder, because the atmosphere is still moving, as if the planet never stopped. At the equator, that means wind at over 1,600 kilometers per hour, near the speed of sound. And it isn't a gust, it isn't a storm front, it's the entire sky, sliding sideways. For people on the surface, it feels impossible. Breathing becomes work. Standing becomes impossible. Not because the air is strong, but because it has mass. And it is moving like a river. The first thing it destroys is visibility. Dust is ripped from deserts. Salt is torn from oceans. Ash rises from wildfires that ignite instantly. Within minutes, the world is wrapped in a choking brown veil. Daylight turns dim, then orange, then night. And inside that darkness, particles become weapons. Sand turns into abrasive spray. Glass turns into shrapnel. Metal fragments turn into bullets. The wind doesn't just knock you down, it strips you. It peels paint from steel. It scours concrete. This is Earth becoming a sandblaster on a planetary scale. Power grids snap. Communication towers collapse. Satellites become meaningless because the ground below has become chaos. Even if you're indoors, you're not safe. Not for long, because the pressure begins to change. Fast-moving air creates low-pressure zones like vacuum pulls across cities. Buildings that survive the impact can still implode. Windows burst inward, doors rip off hinges, roofs lift and vanish. And for anyone near an ocean, the air brings a final warning, a smell of salt, a sharp rise in humidity, and a distant sound, growing louder. Not thunder, not wind. Something heavier, because the atmosphere is only the beginning. The oceans are still moving, and they are about to hit the continents like traveling mountains. Water doesn't care that the planet stopped. It remembers its speed for billions of tons of ocean. Inertia is not a concept. It's a direction. The moment Earth locks in place, the oceans keep moving east, like they're trying to outrun the continents. And at first, you might not understand what's happening, because the sea doesn't rise like a normal wave. It withdraws, then surges, then disappears again, as the entire ocean begins to reorganize itself in motion. Out in deep water, it becomes a traveling bulge, a moving hill of ocean, thousands of kilometers wide. You wouldn't see a tall wave on the horizon. You'd see the horizon itself, bending, and then it reaches land. Coastlines are the first to die, not in hours. In minutes, ports vanish, beaches are erased, entire neighborhoods are lifted and carried inland. But this isn't one tsunami. It's a chain reaction, because the ocean doesn't hit once. It keeps arriving, wave after wave after wave. Walls of water, taller than skyscrapers, not breaking like surf, but pushing like a moving continent. And the sound is not a roar. It's a low, continuous thunder, the sound of Earth being reshaped. Then the water starts to go where it has never gone before. River valleys become highways. The sea races inland through canyons. Floodplains become ocean floor. Salt water pours over farmland, over cities, over roads that used to connect the world. And it doesn't stop, because the ocean isn't just flooding, it's relocating, trying to find a new equilibrium on a planet that no longer rotates. For survivors, the rule is simple. If you are low, you drown. If you are flat, you are swept away. The only safe places are high and far from the paths where water can flow. Mountains, plateaus, the top floors of whatever remains standing. But even there, the threat isn't over. Because when the oceans move, the climate moves with them. And without rotation, Earth is about to lose its most basic rhythm, day, night. The planet is about to enter its first endless sunrise. After the wind, after the oceans, you might expect the planet to finally settle. But Earth has one more shock. Time breaks. Because rotation was never just movement, it was rhythm. It was the reason every living thing knew when to sleep. And now, there is no morning, no evening, no next day. If Earth stops spinning, one side of the planet faces the sun forever. The other side faces space. And instead of a 24-hour cycle, a day becomes 6 months of sunlight, then 6 months of darkness. But here's the terrifying part. Those halves don't take turns anymore. They become permanent, a world that never sleeps, and a world that never wakes. On the sunlit side, the sky stays bright. Shadows don't move. The sun hangs in the same place, like it was nailed to the sky. On the dark side, the stars never set, and the cold begins immediately. It feels almost peaceful at first. No sunrise, no sunset, just stillness. But stillness is a trap, because when half a planet heats up and the other half freezes, the atmosphere begins to flow, not around the planet, but across it, from day to night, from heat to cold, from boiling air to air that wants to fall out of the sky. And somewhere between them, there is a line, a thin moving border where daylight ends and darkness begins, a strip of twilight that circles the earth like a scar. This boundary becomes the most important place on the planet, because it's the only region where temperatures might remain almost normal, not warm, not safe, but survivable. And as the months pass, as the sunlit side keeps burning and the dark side keeps freezing. Humanity begins to understand something. Earth has not stopped. It has transformed into two worlds stitched together by a single fragile edge. And the next question is simple. What happens to a planet that never turns away from the sun? In the old world, the sun warmed Earth evenly over time. Day, night, seasons, currents, but without rotation, the planet stops sharing heat. And that creates a divide, so extreme it feels unreal. On the day side, the surface begins to cook, not instantly, but relentlessly. Sunlight hits the same regions, hour after hour, week after week, month after month. Oceans start to steam, lakes shrink into salt pans, soil dries into powder, forests burn until there is nothing left to burn. As water evaporates, the air turns heavy, humid, unstable. Thunderstorms form and never leave. Cloud towers rise to the edge of space. Lightning becomes constant, a permanent storm belt, feeding off the same endless heat. But on the night side, the opposite happens. Without sunlight, the temperature falls and keeps falling. First, the ground freezes, then the rivers, then the oceans, not at the surface, but deeper, as ice slowly spreads like a disease. And in the coldest regions, something even stranger begins. The atmosphere itself can start to freeze. Not all of it, not everywhere, but the idea is horrifying. Air turning into frost, carbon dioxide turning into dry ice, oxygen thinning as it becomes harder to keep gases in motion. It's not silent either. Ice expands, rock fractures, mountains crack under thermal stress. Entire landscapes break apart, simply from cold. Now picture the boundary between these worlds, a line where superheated air meets deep freeze, where moisture collides with ice, where pressure drops and wind accelerates. This is where the atmosphere tries to balance itself and fails. The result is a permanent global storm system wrapping around the planet, a ring of violent winds, blizzards on one side, firestorms on the other. Earth becomes two planets glued together, a bright world of steam and lightning, a dark world of ice and silence, and between them, a narrow strip of twilight, where survival might still be possible. But survival will depend on one question, not how strong you are, not how smart you are, but where you are standing when the climate finally settles into its new normal. Earth doesn't just change its weather, it changes its body. Right now, our planet isn't a perfect sphere. It's slightly bulged at the equator, wider by about 42 kilometers. That bulge exists for one reason: rotation. As Earth spins, centrifugal force pushes outward, not enough to cancel gravity, but enough to stretch the planet, and the oceans follow that shape, pulled outward into an equatorial swell. But if Earth stops spinning, that force disappears. Suddenly, gravity becomes cleaner, more honest, and over time the planet begins to relax, like a spinning top that finally stops and settles. The equatorial bulge slowly collapses. The surface shifts, the crust adjusts, not gently, because rock does not like to move. It resists until it breaks. In the years after the stop, the planet would experience tectonic stress on a scale we've never seen. Faults reawaken, new fractures form, earthquakes spread across continents, and then the water starts to migrate. Without the bulge, sea level is no longer even. The ocean begins to redistribute, slowly but relentlessly, toward the poles. Imagine it, a planet where the sea drains away from the tropics and piles up in the north and south, forming vast polar oceans, while the equator becomes higher ground. not because land rises, but because the water leaves. Old coastlines become deserts. New coastlines form where no human city was ever built. Even the weight of that moving water matters. As it shifts toward the poles, it loads the crust, pressing down, bending plates, triggering more earthquakes, and volcanism. And beneath it all, the planet's interior continues to respond. The mantle circulates, the core churns. But now the whole system runs under a new condition, no rotation above. Earth is still alive, still dynamic, still moving, just differently. So the catastrophe isn't only what happens in the first minutes, it's what happens in the decades that follow. As the planet slowly reshapes itself into something it has never been before, and when you change the shape of Earth, you may also change something even more important, the invisible shield that protects life itself. There is something you almost never think about, because you never have to, an invisible shield surrounding the planet. Earth's magnetic field. It is the reason compasses work, the reason the solar wind doesn't strip our atmosphere away, the reason radiation from space doesn't reach the surface in full force. It is planetary armor, and it comes from deep below, a churning ocean of liquid metal, the outer core moving around a solid inner core, creating electric currents and turning Earth into a giant magnet. This engine is called the geodynamo, and it depends on motion, heat, convection, rotation. So what happens when Earth stops spinning? The surface locks instantly, but the deep interior doesn't stop in the same way. It has its own inertia, its own momentum. Still, over time, rotation matters. It helps organize that flow. It gives the dynamo structure. Without it, the magnetic field could weaken or become unstable, not necessarily in days, not necessarily in years, but in the long aftermath. It becomes a real possibility. And if the field weakens, the sky changes first. Auroras spread, not just near the poles, but across entire continents. The night sky becomes beautiful in a way that feels wrong, because that beauty is radiation colliding with the upper atmosphere. Satellites begin to fail. GPS becomes unreliable. Communication breaks in strange, unpredictable waves, and high in the atmosphere, particles from the sun slam into the planet harder than before. Airlines can't fly certain routes. Electronics become fragile. Power grids become vulnerable to storms that never touch the ground. But the most dangerous part isn't technology. It's biology. More radiation reaching the surface means higher cancer risk, more genetic damage, more pressure on every living system trying to survive. In this new world, Earth can endure storms. It can endure darkness. It can endure heat. But when the shield fades, life itself becomes exposed. So as humanity fights for survival on the surface, another battle begins above it, a battle in the sky. And it raises the final brutal question: where can you live on a planet that no longer protects you? By now, the planet is no longer one world, it's two, a day side that burns, a night side that freezes. So the question isn't, how do we save Earth? It's simpler and more brutal. Where can we live? The answer is not in the sunlight, and it's not in the dark. It's on the edge, the boundary between them, the moving border of temperature and pressure, the permanent dusk, the twilight belt. This thin ring around the planet becomes the last viable habitat. Because here, the sun is always low on the horizon, always setting, always rising. Temperatures can hover near survivable ranges, cold but manageable, hot but avoidable. And most importantly, water can still exist as liquid, Not everywhere, not easily, but enough. Human civilization would shrink into a line. Cities built like fortresses, low to the ground, half underground, not to hide from enemies, but to hide from the sky. Because the wind never truly stops here. It only changes direction. It only shifts as the planet struggles to balance heat. So buildings become sealed systems, pressure-controlled corridors, airlocks, filters that never rest. Food becomes engineering. Farms move indoors, hydroponics, vertical towers of greens under artificial light, protein grown in tanks, water recycled until nothing is wasted. Energy becomes the new currency. On the day side of the belt, solar power is constant, reliable, endless. On the night side, there is cold, perfect for storing energy, preserving materials, keeping machines efficient. Ice becomes the new oil, mined from frozen regions beyond the belt, transported back like treasure. And if the magnetic shield weakens, protection becomes architecture, radiation shielding in walls, underground living spaces, thick layers of regolith and concrete. This is not survival in the wild. This is survival by infrastructure. A civilization built around life support, not as a temporary measure, but as the new normal. And slowly, a strange truth emerges. The safest place on Earth is not a continent, not a country. It's a moving ring of cities, following a permanent sunset. Humanity chasing twilight, because it is the only place left where Earth still feels almost like home. If humanity survives, it doesn't rebuild the old world, it abandons it. Because on a motionless Earth, geography becomes destiny, and the only livable geography is narrow. So civilization compresses. It becomes thin, dense, strategic. A chain of settlements stretched along the twilight belt, like beads on a wire. And for the first time in history, the most valuable resource isn't land, it's position. A few kilometers too far into daylight, and your cooling systems fail. Your water evaporates, your crops die. A few kilometers too far into darkness, and fuel freezes. Pipes crack, batteries drain. So the border becomes everything. Cities are built to move, not on wheels like science fiction, but by expansion. New districts rise on the safe side, while old districts are sealed off and abandoned to heat or cold. Humanity begins to migrate, not across oceans, but along a circle, and that changes how people think. There is no east or west in the old sense. There is only toward the light, or away from it. Time changes too. Without sunrise and sunset, days lose meaning. Clocks become artificial. Work cycles are scheduled. Sleep is engineered with lighting and routines. Children grow up never seeing a true night sky or a true midday sun. Only the endless horizon glow, the eternal orange line. Culture evolves around twilight. The most important festivals are not seasonal. They're electrical. Energy harvest peaks. Water convoys return. A new dome opens. A new corridor connects two cities, and the outside world becomes myth. The hot lands are spoken about like deserts of fire. The cold lands, like kingdoms of ice. Places where you only go with purpose, to mine, to retrieve, to recover what can still be used. Because even in this new civilization, the ruins of the old one still exist. Silent cities buried under sand, coastlines that no longer have oceans, skyscrapers frozen into ice on the dark side. And every expedition reminds survivors of the same truth. Earth did not die. It transformed, and humanity transformed with it into a species living on a boundary, clinging to a thin strip of stability, on a planet that no longer turns, If Earth stopped spinning, the world wouldn't explode. It wouldn't vanish. It would simply become something else. A planet with one endless day, one endless night, and a single fragile border between them. In that twilight ring, humanity could survive, not by conquering nature, but by adapting to physics. The old Earth would still be there, silent, frozen, or burning under a motionless sun, but along the edge, lights would appear, a chain of cities, a ribbon of moving civilization, following a permanent sunset around the globe. And from space, the planet would look different. Not like a world of continents and oceans, but like a divided sphere with a thin glowing scar where life refused to disappear.